on Australia's Business Channel. This is Dept to Equity.
Welcome to Debt to Equity, where we talk with the people who are managing your money. I'm Diana Dorahy. Well, it's a question every investor is asking. Is this the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning? One asset manager believes it's too soon to call an end to the credit crisis. Nick Raffaele, who runs the Asian operation of Ashton Advisors, says the old adage, everything will work out because it always does, is not a wise investment strategy. And Nick Raffaele joins me now. Nick, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
So it's too early to write the obituary, you think?
We think it is a little bit early. Has the credit crisis come to an end? Ashton doesn't think so. Is this the time to declare victory? Is this the time to write the obituary? We think it's a bit premature. Diana, the markets tend to be long biased. Most of the money out there is long money. And so generally people want things to work out. People want the markets to go up. They yearn for good news. They yearn for positive results. But in the current environment, based on the research which we've done, and we tend to be quite fact-based in the work which we do, we think that an approach of caution is probably better than blind optimism.
But are we closer to the end than to the beginning, do you think?
Well, if one were to measure it, I would say we're probably somewhere in the middle at the moment. Certainly a lot has happened already, but we think that a lot is still to take place. I mean, if you look at some numbers, for example, everyone talks about these write-downs. So let's look at some statistics. The IMF has estimated that there'll be approximately $900 billion of write-downs or write-offs in the financial services world as a result of the credit crisis. Of that, they estimate about $500 billion will be attributable to banks, commercial banks and investment banks. $500 billion is an enormous amount of money. So the question is, how will these banks be rehabilitated? How will the balance sheets be restored? I mean, two ways really, earnings and capital raising. So, I mean, if you look at earnings as an example, how are you going to earn back that amount of money? In the current environment, we think it's going to be extremely difficult, particularly because you have revenue streams such as securitization, which have been lucrative over the past 4 or 5 years. They're going to be pared back significantly, and so the ability of banks to earn back the money is going to be challenging. Okay, if you can't earn it back, perhaps you can raise it in the market. Certainly we've seen some of the sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East and from Asia step up, write big checks to take chunks of high-profile financial institutions, the likes of Merrill Lynch and Citigroup. I think, unfortunately, a lot of these investments have proved to have been ill-timed, so the values at which the investments were made are higher than the market values today. Currently, they're loss-making investments on the books of the sovereign wealth funds. So are these people going to continue to write the checks? Very difficult to see it.
So, in other words, there is no end, there is no possibility of getting those earnings back?
Well, we think it'll be difficult to earn the money back, and we think that the ability of the markets to contribute capital back to the organizations is also going to be a stretch. The sovereign wealth funds, are they going to continue to write checks? We don't think so. The equity markets themselves, through rights issues and equity raisings, they've been reasonably successful to date, but we just think there's a lot more still coming down the pike, and we think that every time there's an announcement, the market wants to interpret it as saying, the worst is over.
But hope is good for the market, isn't it? There must be a psychology of investing that says, all right, well, things are turning around. Doesn't the market benefit from a healthy, positive investor outlook?
Well, perhaps Ashton's a bit contrarian in this way, but we tend to take the view that hope is not a good investment strategy if you want to make money. I mean, if you look at subprime, for example, for 3, 4, 5 years, if you stood on the wrong side of the subprime, in other words, if you were shorting subprime, you would have lost money. But anybody who'd done their homework had suggested that there was an enormous credit bubble building in the US. I mean, what was happening there? You had blue-collar workers in the Rust Belt, for example. You had property speculators in Florida. These people were taking out risky mortgages. It's highly speculative stuff. But how was it being sold to the world? The investment banks were packaging it up, securitizing it, creating tranches, which they called AAA. Of course, we now know they were nowhere near AAA, and selling them around the world to institutions. So if you'd been a contrarian all through that process, you would have lost money for a period of time, and then you would have made a fortune of money. At Ashton, I guess our approach is slightly different. We're an absolute return fund-of-fund manager. So for us, it's key to be making money regardless of what's happening in the market. So last year, for example, the short subprime trade was, in fact, our most profitable trade.
There are still a few areas that you think point to trouble ahead, though.
Absolutely. We think that particularly some of the regional US financial institutions, where there won't be the same equity market support as there has been, say, for a Citigroup or a Merrill Lynch, we think that some of those could come under pressure. And if I were to stick my neck out and suggest a name or two,
Go on, do it.
well, I think Washington Mutual, one should keep a careful eye on going forward. They have a lot of exposure in the property market in California, a lot of exposure in the property market in Florida. These are sort of two of the hardest hit areas where there was the highest level of speculation. We think that there's a business called ResCap in the US, which we think could be under a bit of pressure later in the year. And in terms of the majors, I mean, we all know what's happened to Bear Stearns, but we think Lehman Brothers potentially could, I'm not forecasting doom and gloom here, but if I were to pitch where the next level of stress would be, it could potentially be Lehman Brothers.
Why Lehman Brothers over the other big financials?
Probably as a function of their balance sheet, where they are in the market.
Are they in a similar position to Bear Stearns, or is it a...
They have operated in the same space. They have been participants in securitization, and they don't have that, if you like, enormous presence like a Citigroup has. I mean, the US wouldn't allow Citigroup to go down. It just wouldn't be politically acceptable. But anyway, let's not get too focused on the names. I guess time will tell how things pan out.